So last episode, we talked about the experience of growing up in an alcoholic family system. And today we're going to focus on common traits and wounds of someone who grew up in an alcoholic family system.
We're definitely going to get into that. I did want to say last time we spoke on our first part of the series about the different roles and archetypes of growing up in an adult family of alcoholics, an alcoholic family system. And I forgot to mention that we can switch between those archetypes and also blend them, and we can also evolve. So someone might start out to be a scapegoat and then become a hero, etc. So, and that can be a part of the healing process. All of that ties into today's podcast. We're going to talk about, the wounds and traits. So, we're going to start with perfectionism, which we talked about last time. We won't spend a ton of time on it. But basically trying to earn love and acceptance through performance. We're also going to talk about fear of intimacy, which ties into every single one of the archetypes that we talked about last time. That's relevant. So closeness equals danger and disappointment. We protect ourselves from disappointment and danger by evading closeness. Control. We grew up powerless, chaotic, abused, unseen. And so there's great danger in not having control over your environment. And that can be a real strong trait to let go of. And I really want to touch on how this ties into spirituality, because it's a big one. When your faith life is like, surrender to God who is all good, but you don't have the experience of your formative experience of God was your childhood parents, your parents growing up and they were dangerous. What do you do with that?
Right.
And then people pleasing. So fear of conflict equals danger. We're just going to talk a little bit about hypervigilance to people's moods, needing to people please and say yes, that sort of thing, why it's so difficult to let go of that. One of the things that I want to talk about in regards to this is like with each of these different traits that we've defined, how they show up. And so with perfectionism, you had mentioned scrupulosity is a common result. And it's sort of an indicator that that's what's happening there. One of the other things that I've seen, I don't know if you could speak to this at all, but the good girl. I see with the perfectionist, there's this common good girl obsession where it's like, I just have to be perfectly dependable. Everybody has to like me. I always have to like hit the mark. I have to do everything well. And I'm going to be like the good girl. And I see that. And I hear that so often, just trying to be perfect, everything to everyone. And at the same time, simultaneously feeling like you're never enough. And there's this inner rigidity, this inner self-hatred that drives that.
Right. And that fear that other people might see that I'm not perfect, which really makes it hard to have deep connections with people. It makes it really hard. It can foster social anxiety, right? This fear of, how are people perceiving me? Because if I think poorly about myself, it's easy to think other people are going to think negatively about me too.
Yeah.
Right. If I don't talk compassionately about myself, how am I going to believe that other people would be compassionate with me?
Yeah, for sure.
So there's definitely like a fear of, will people reject me? How are they going to respond to me? And this perfectionism that you're talking about, Lauren, it's like the bar is so high that they can never reach it.
Yes.
So they inevitably feel down on themselves.
Yeah. Sometimes I refer to my office as the good girl graveyard because it's like where good girls come to die. I'm just like that worshiping.
That part in them.
Yeah. The good girl graveyard. Yeah. Just like, let's
love it.
Stop worshiping at the altar of good girl. People pleasers as well, which we're going to get into people pleasing as a trait, that she also worships at the altar of good girl in a different way, but it's still the same thing. It reminds me of Encanto, which I know that we had talked about maybe like doing a thing on, but the sister relationships, I think about them as I'm talking of like each one of them is perfectionistic in a different way. It's very interesting.
And I can imagine, Lauren, that as you're walking with people who you're asking for them to put the good girl into the grave, right? And to not try so hard. I bet that, maybe you can speak to this, that the therapeutic relationship is so important because for somebody to allow themselves to not try so hard and to let other people see their flaws and accept that they're not perfect, that must feel really scary for someone who's lifeline and survival mechanism was to be perfect.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of is like, and I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but as I've matured in my own spiritual life, there have come moments in my life where I've had to say to myself, like, I feel like I'm dying. And it occurs to me, like, this is the call. This is the call. Like, the call is to die for what I believe in, to bear the cross. And it is kind of a kind of dying. And I think when you're going through a transformation or a metamorphosis, like the one that we're talking about right now, in no way do I at all want to underestimate the suffering, pain, and death that are required in order for you to evolve out of this role. Like, it's the scariest thing they've ever done and the most painful and difficult thing they've ever done in their life.
One thing I've also seen with clients is that there's this sense of grief of once they realize that it's actually healthier for them to put this striving for being the good girl to rest, is they realize that they've been putting energy towards something that was actually not something that was, first of all, not achievable, but also not worth running after. And to realize that can make people really angry and sad, to say, I've wasted all this time and energy to try to be something that's not even serving me. And I think for some people there can then be that resistance to actually acknowledging that that's the next step for healing, because that means that they have to accept that they have put a lot of time and energy, sweat and tears into something. And a lot of my clients will then say they feel like they've lost parts of their childhood because they've tried so hard. That's what they've invested all their time and energy in, and it feels very sad to accept that that's something that they're not going to achieve and that they also are going to stop chasing.
And I would be tempted to say they haven't, not only are they grieving the loss of all of that energy and their childhood and all of that, it's also representative of the grief of accepting that they were set up. They were set up by a dysfunctional family system to never be able to get what they needed. And that's so sad.
Right. Yeah.
That's a grief in and of itself. Right. And of course, no one wants to admit that. I remember going through the program myself and being like, I don't wish this on anyone. It's no wonder to me that people stay alcoholics. It's no wonder to me that people don't get help that they need, because going through the dark night of your soul and having to die and having to lose everything, your entire framework for life is so insanely painful
and so unsettling.
But gosh, it is worth it.
Yes.
It is worth it. It is so worth it. And I'm saying that obviously on the other side, but I can connect to the grief and pain of what that experience was like daily. I can so easily touch it. So
I think there's something very natural in all of us to want to hold on to the idea that we had a good childhood. I think it can be really, even as adults that were through it, it can be a really unsettling thing to be faced with, that our childhood wasn't perfect or was painful. Because I think we all long for that safety. And I think especially as kids, right? We want to feel safe. And if something isn't safe, because kids can't really influence or change their environment very much, their only option is to pretend that everything's okay. Pink has this great song, Family Portrait, where it's where she sings about how in the family portrait, everything looks happy, and can't we just go back to that? Right? I think kids want to pretend and make believe that everything's okay. And so if that's you, if you're still on the fence of did I grow up in a chaotic family system? Was it that bad? That can be a healing step in and of itself, but a very unsettling one at first, to acknowledge that what you experienced was chaotic and was painful. Maybe not all of it, right? Even I think in chaotic family systems, there can be good parts, right? So I don't want to say everything's bad. Also, though, your parents, I never want to demonize, right? We never want to demonize your parents or the person that had the addiction in your family, because they probably also had to have their own trauma, right?
For sure.
And
also, they're a child
also judging and blaming does not help your healing journey.
For sure.
But you need to acknowledge what was done to you. And those can be two different things, right? We can acknowledge that you were hurt and that things happened to you that were not right, without having to go to judging and blaming the person who did it to you.
And judging and blaming for sure can be a first beginning step to healing. Like it can be like part of the, so I always like leave room and I'm like, oh, curious. What is that? Tell me about that. But I definitely, you're right, that to stay stuck in blaming and judgment isn't a full process of healing.
Yeah.
It's a stage.
Right. Yes. Because you have to actually acknowledge what was done to you so that you know what you're letting go of.
Yeah. Next, we have fear of intimacy and how that shows up in the spiritual life, avoidance of prayer, avoidance of community.
Oh, yeah. Confession.
Yeah, avoidance of confession. Essentially just closeness equals danger, so nobody can be close to me.
Yeah.
There's this saying that was really terrible that was said in my family with familiarity breeds contempt.
Familiarity breeds contempt.
And I was told that many, many, many times growing up of like, if you're familiar with someone and you get to know them, you'll have contempt for them.
Oh, how sad.
And they will have contempt for you. And
Which made you believe that anybody who would get to know you really closely
would have contempt for me, and that I would have contempt for them. So there's that real like belief that's a saying. That's an American idiom to say that familiarity breeds contempt. And I'm assuming it comes from alcoholic families.
Yeah.
But all that to say that is the underlying fear.
But then how difficult would it be for someone like that to be vulnerable with God and to draw close to him? Because
It's death.
Because he already knows you so deeply. So that's how terrifying is that?
It's death.
Because if God who's so powerful hates you, then
Yeah. The things that we're talking about like cannot be approached with enough honor and compassion. Anyone willing to try and recover from a dysfunctional family system where they were so neglected and abused that they had to take on an archetypal role just to survive, the amount of suffering that they will endure just to heal, and it makes so much sense why they have these avoidance strategies. You know, the perfectionist or the hero, that's an avoidance strategy, and you just keep running. You can just run. You can achieve, and your achievements become your way of avoiding. Or for the scapegoat, usually it's substance use. Substance use becomes your way of avoiding and numbing out, just like your parents did before you. Or for the lonely, isolated child, the really common one is fantasizing and sex addiction. These become huge aspects of the lonely child, the lost child. That's how they avoid. That's how they continue to escape their pain. And so the dysfunction, and it's often humor and disengagement with the mascot. It makes sense why people utilize these coping strategies. It's all a beautiful attempt on your subconscious's part to avoid years, decades of deep pain. And when you finally turn to face the lion, that's what I call it, facing the lion. When you finally turn to face it, what you're looking at is death.
yeah.
You're looking at real pain. You're looking at an actual dark night of the soul. You know, like Eckhart Tolle and Carl Jung talk about the dark night of the soul, and they say it's a death. It's a spiritual death. It's a total reframing. It's a total deconstruction of everything that you've known up to now, and you're building from nothing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people will say, and I found myself saying this a lot when I was experiencing these things, was, I don't even know what love is.
Yeah.
I used to say that I said that for years. I don't know what love is. I still don't. But I remember feeling so confounded by the idea of it. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And it still actually doesn't. Yeah, you're undoing an entire framework for how you live.
Yeah. Which is, I think, another reason why it's so important to find a good therapist to do this with. Because like deconstructing and rebuilding, I'm sure feels so like your whole world, like you're saying, like nothing makes sense.
Exactly.
Like you have like no foundation, and that can feel really scary to have someone who's like, I'm here, we're doing this together, I got you. You know, so important.
They provide that structure. They provide the safety, the parameters, the boundaries, which some people who come from ACAs, they're like, I hated that my, therapist didn't answer my call when I was in an emergency. And I was like, that's good. That's good that they set boundaries with you.
Yes.
It's good that they don't just, and that might be painful to hear, because you might, when you find somebody who's you perceive as safe or open to you emotionally, you might have a tendency to just cave into them, and you have to learn to stand. And so there are just beautiful aspects of working with a therapist.
Yeah.
Control issues. Control issues and faith life. How does this show up? Difficulty surrendering to God's will, which we kind of have already touched quite a bit on. Surrender to someone that you perceive as a tyrant and evil, and let these bad things happen to you, and abandoned you in your time of need, especially if you actually believe in God and actually have a faith in his providence and in his will. These are the kinds of existential questions that you're coming up against. It's really hard to face that.
You know, Sister Miriam James in The Healing the Whole Person says that, people sometimes ask her, why does God allow suffering? And she says she doesn't know why, but she says she always tells them that God doesn't allow any suffering for which he doesn't have a plan for redemption. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, that whatever happened to you, no human can, we don't understand why God allowed this to happen. God certainly doesn't will our suffering, but sometimes he allows it, and the question is why. We don't have an answer for that, but we do know that he has a plan for redemption and wants to heal you and make you whole. Certainly once we're all in heaven, there'll be redemption and healing.
Yeah. And we begin heaven right here on earth. Like, we're called to begin living heaven here. So healing begins here.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
There's hope. There's hope here.
There is hope. Yes.
Also, with control issues and faith life, we see rigidity, we see moralism, where people become very black and white. Like, this is where I think of, there are sects of the Catholic Church that tend to be more rigid and black and white. And I don't want to put anyone down, so I won't say, but I do think that there can be tendencies to gravitate toward black and white thinking, real rigid moralism. When I say this, I already can hear in the back of my mind the outcry of fear that people who need moralistic rigidity to feel safe, I can already hear their cries of like, oh, you're just a lukewarm Catholic. And I'm here to assure you, like, I'm not. And also, I know that moralism and rigidity impair closeness.
I mean, Jesus rebuked the Pharisees for their rigidity.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's so important to see too, like, these are people who grew up with utter chaos and no structure. So the idea of threatening the only thing that they know is so scary. And you are a threat when you come at it in any way, and when you shed any kind of light on the negative components of it. And so I just want to speak to that, if that's you, no hate or animosity toward you, and also just recognizing, like, it's actually that rigidity that keeps you from experiencing real closeness in your relationship with God and with other people. Trying to control people and outcomes, that shows a real lack of trust. And without trust, you can't have a relationship. So that would be what I would say to that. And then the last one, for people pleasing, how pathology affects our faith life with people pleasing is an inability to say no. And burnout. Which probably leads to, that lack of boundaries probably leads to resentment. Yes. Relationships. Yeah. And an utter inability to discern for oneself their own conscience, a complete detachment. There's a mute button on for your own conscience. When you find yourself seeking validation and understanding from everybody but internal. Yeah. When no answers are being answered inside. It's all external. You externalize all of your problems. You ask everybody for their opinion. You can't form an opinion yourself. You're always feeling guilty. Honey. That's people pleasing. Yeah. And people pleasing should not be confused with charity. Well, they're nothing alike. But I mean, wouldn't you say that people could confuse those two? Yeah. Of just being charitable. Right. I'm serving everyone, and I don't want to say no because that's not charitable. Watch our video on boundaries versus charity, because we kind of cover that. Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right though. Yeah. People will disguise. And when you come at their people pleasing, they're like, well, this is how I'm just saying yes to, every opportunity that's put before me. Yes. And not doing that, then oftentimes we'll feel like I'm being selfish. Yes. Yeah. I'm selfish. And I don't want to be selfish. There's the shame again. Yep. So. And learning to say no opens the door to real emotional attunement. It opens the door, just like all of these, the reason you're doing them is to avoid your inner conflict.
Right.
The reason you're doing any of these things is to avoid the pain of decades of abuse and neglect.
Yeah.
That is why you do these behaviors. You don't want to tune in to what's going on internally. And this is the path to do that. And I know that what I'm asking is terribly painful. So, it's not an easy task, but these are the strategies. For each one of these topics, how do we sort of find some healing and pair that with maybe some faith life things? I came up with some ideas. For perfectionism, trust in God's grace and mercy, which I know, you've probably had some experience with OCD and scrupulosity and working with that.
Yeah, trusting that God is not out to get you.
Exactly.
Trusting that he doesn't expect you to be perfect. Realizing that God has made you and made your brain. And if he had wanted you to be perfect, he would have done so. And since he's not made you perfect, then that's actually just the way you're supposed to be.
Yeah, what a beautiful one. And I think too, like just recognizing, like saying, just trust. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But what I mean is do an act of trust. So if your thing is that you go to confession every single day, do a small act of trust and don't.
Yes. Yeah. And if you leave confession and you have doubts of whether you did the right kind of confession, then reject those.
And trust.
And trust. And instead of engaging with those nagging thoughts of what if I didn't do the right confession? What if I missed something? God's going to be mad at me. You say, I'm not going to answer the question. And you trust.
Yeah.
And trust can be an act, like a willful act. You might not feel the peace right away, but like you were saying, Lauren, you do the thing, right? You do the act. Your brain is observing you doing it, and the feeling will follow. Somebody once said to me, put the facts in your faith and the feelings will follow.
Yeah.
So you do the thing, you do the act of trust, and your feelings will follow. It'll become easier.
Yeah.
Time.
Beautiful. I also, want to remind people, thoughts are behaviors. So, as Skinner taught us, thoughts are behaviors. So what you choose to decide in your mind of like what you're going to meditate on, what you're going to think about, what you're going to participate in, that's a behavior.
Which does not apply to intrusive thoughts.
Sure. Yes.
Spontaneous thoughts, those aren't a behavior.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
This is an OCD, but yes.
No, I just really want to make that point. So the intrusive thoughts you have are not your behaviors. They're not also your values. But those negative thoughts you have in your head, right? Those
and images and impulses.
So you can replace those. You can't push away thoughts, but you can replace them with, Jesus, I trust in you. And maybe you have to say that to yourself 20 times. Jesus, I trust in you. And it's not going to feel true at first, but with time, it will feel true.
Very true. Very good point. With fear of intimacy, safe relationships. Get yourself a therapist.
Allow yourself to be loved by your friends.
Tell them honestly. Invite them into your house when it's messy.
Yes. And if they offer to do something nice for you,
accept it.
You tell yourself, I am worthy of their love.
Yeah.
It's not going to feel true at first, and that's okay. But you do the act, you accept their love, and your brain is observing you. Do that, and it will start to update itself.
Safe relationships with real people being kind of the underlying, like the
so not AI.
Yeah, not, and also not imaginary fantasy relationships. Not your book, not your phone, not the computer.
Yeah.
Real people. Also Eucharistic prayer, a real opportunity. Like I think about Eucharistic adoration. That's a real opportunity for actual connection with Christ.
Yeah.
There's real intimacy there.
Yeah. Our parish priest once told us the story that when he was visiting Rome and he got to chat with a monk who was part of an order that do a lot of praying, like 24-hour praying. And he was just asking him, asking this monk who spends a lot of time in prayer, who must be very good at praying. He said, how do you pray? And this monk simply said, I sit and I watch the love between Jesus and the Father. He says, that's all I do. I sit and I watch the love between the two. And I was just thinking how in adoration we can do that so beautifully, where we just observe the love of the Trinity. And through that, we get that model of what is love, right? You were saying, what is love? Watch how the Father loves the Son, and let that inform what love is, and learn from that, and then also realize that, right, that love that the Father has for his Son and the Son for the Father, that's the love that they have for you.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's really beautiful. For control, One of the things that I suggested here is the Ignatian Steps for Spiritual Discernment. I have a little book. Why? Because, so this is Discerning the Will of God by Gallagher. Why? Because the tendency is to have control at any cost. And when something starts to go awry, to change course. And so with spiritual discernment, we learn to allow things to come to their natural end, allow things to fall where they will, and trust in the will of God as we choose our path and through discern, like through the guidance of the Holy Spirit. So you learn when to be quiet, you learn when to speak up, you learn when it would be wise to do or say something, you learn when it would be wise not to act, you learn when it would be wise to try and exert some influence, you learn when it would have no effect. And so this is how you can learn to let go, control. I did that, discerning the will of God, in like a group, and that was very helpful. So I don't know, just a thought for people.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yes, in this way, God's providence replaces hyper-control, hyper-vigilance. The last one is people-pleasing. How do we integrate like faith with that in order to facilitate healing? The thing that came to my mind was reading the Gospels as well as the Psalms. David is incredibly honest about his inner world. He talks about God destroying his enemies and all these things. He was not like a mincer of words. He had no problem connecting to his inner child. And I think as well, looking at Christ as like the perfectly integrated person, he was not afraid of upsetting people. He was not a people pleaser. Rome didn't kill Jesus because he was a people pleaser, you know? I think that those are all things that like can be very helpful to sit at the feet of Jesus, sit at the feet of David, and read these things and study like, what does it mean to not be a people pleaser, to stand by my conscience and not self-abandon, but also be attuned to like what God could be calling me to. That takes skill, that takes time, but just, I don't know, study it, look at it, look in the Bible for these kinds of examples that oppose the modern contraption of people pleasing.
Yeah, and ask the Holy Spirit to renew you in that area.
Yeah.
And ask for the intercession of Saint Dymphna, who is the patron saint of people struggling with emotional distress.
Yes.
And yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. This was so insightful. We hope you liked this video. We hope that this blessed you and inspired you. Have a good week. God bless. Bye.
Bye, guys.